Dustin, are you a Minnesotan?
I am a Minnesotan. I'm actually over here in Wright County and a little bit greener pastures in Wright County, Buffalo, Minnesota. So a little nicer over here on this side of the Crow, but, we still have to live under the same rule of DFL trifecta. So, yeah.
Do you fancy yourself to be on the Walz China story? You've been writing about it or tweeting about it. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, and this is kind of one of the newer ones that I think a lot of people just haven't realized. Like, at least us Minnesotans, I've found very few people that have actually known that this guy's been to China 30-plus times. I mean, we like to focus on, tax and spend Democrats and some of these odd, bizarre social policies. But, the national stage really does something for Minnesota candidates. And, I mean, you can even go with the Republicans on this side, like Michelle Bachmann and Tim Pawlenty. Once they went national, they had a much larger magnifying glass on them. And this also goes for the Democrats as well. Like, how much has, traditional Minnesota media just avoided covering half of these stories? And, that's the beauty that I've seen, at least for pretty much any Minnesotan, probably you guys as well, is we're honestly just happy half the stuff's being covered now. But, yeah, no, this has kind of been a new revelation even for me. But, yeah, I've been following this one pretty closely because this is just one of the stories that needs to get out there more.
His handlers are now cutting the China visits down to 15. Apparently they think the American voter can handle 15 visits to China, but not 30. So we're cutting that number in half. I don't know how many times he went to China, and I don't know if there's anything we are to discover by these China visits in terms of him having some nefarious role. Do you have any evidence that might be taking place?
Well, I do know one thing, and that is that he has admitted to visiting this many times. He's actually on video. I want to say it was like the high 20s, like 25, 28 on that video, but it was years ago, and he had visited previously since then. So he's been there that many times. There's no question about that. Now, I mean, obviously, some of this stuff is, it could be hyperbole. It's tough to prove this kind of stuff, especially when you're dealing with the international stage and how much, local operatives are actually able to look into this. But when we look at like the GOP Oversight Committee and all that they're kind of doing to unfold some of this stuff and bring it to the surface, we've also had a lot of whistleblowers who actually went with the guy over to China. I mean, I believe Alpha News, one of our nice local outlets here that covers more for our side of the aisle, they've had whistleblowers come to them and say the guy's a straight-up Maoist. And he very much believes in these communist beliefs. And that's why the guy's visited so many times, to the degree that we have a lot of old newspaper evidence on this stuff. Like what we kind of say with small towns, I'll pick on my wife here for a moment when she was out in South Dakota. I mean, the news story is literally husband and wife have nice dinner with the Johnsons. That's what it is when you're out in a small town. Well, they have these small town papers in Nebraska where he's from. And of course, if one of your residents is going to visit China so many times, they're going to write about it. That's been the beauty of this. There is a lot of documentation on it.
Well, we can count the number of times he's been to China. That can be easily chronicled and verified. What we have yet to discern is if it's resulted in anything that is beneficial to the Chinese against the interests of the United States. But so far, that kind of evidence does not exist.
Yeah, we basically just have whistleblowers at this point, to my knowledge. And, we can kind of go back to some of these stories. One whistleblower, he's got a Nebraska National Guards member who served with him at the same time. And at the time of them serving, very few people had access to a nuclear manual. And it was also blocked off from the public. It was exclusive just to these small group of National Guardsmen. And it went missing right as the guy went over to China, but then it reappeared after he got back. So there's stuff like that. out there where it's like,
Yeah, we
oh, this
covered
guy's
that, and
going
what we
there.
were able to determine is that I'd like to think that if that was a secret that he was selling to the Chinese, we would have learned about it by now.
Well,
I don't trust Walz as far as I can throw him for a variety of reasons, but and he's a congenital liar. He was not on Tiananmen Square in 1989. He was at home in Nebraska, and the small town newspapers are the ones that have demonstrated that. But we have no evidence that he's a Chinese agent. Let's cut to the chase. That seems to be what the whistleblowers would wish to allege, and that seems to be what the tone of some of the national coverage is. But we have no evidence that he is a Chinese agent acting in Minnesota or this country on behalf of China. Would you agree?
to a degree, but we obviously have a lot of circumstantial, and where there's smoke, there's fire. And another thing, at least in regards to an actual trail, there is money trail on some of this stuff, and it's documented in some of these older papers with the small town stuff. And one of those being that he actually started this business that ended up bringing students over, which then they were brought forth and actually were induced with all of this basically Chinese CCP propaganda through his business, which also received an award through the Nebraska Junior Chamber of Commerce. Then that's where we kind of got that story on him lying about receiving a award from the senior,
Right.
the standard Nebraska Chamber. It's the same business, but it's on record there that the CCP actually paid for the trips for these students to basically get them in front of CCP indoctrination. And then obviously some of these other stories where he very directly states that, well, communism is where everyone's treated equally. And what a kindergarten way to look at about the largest mass killer in human history, and that being communism. And just kind of having that soft spot for that type of an ideology. And of course, some of his other stuff, hiring different commissioners that have Mao posters, propaganda posters that are very rare, down hanging in their basement, and appointing these types of individuals to the IRRB, which oversees the largest mineral deposits of copper nickel in the world, untapped. So why are we putting a guy who has had all of these connections to the CCP over the years? They pay for his trips. No regular person's really been to the same place 30 plus times, in a standard case. There obviously people visit places and they go about, but a regular person really probably doesn't go and see Niagara Falls 30 times because they really like it. They definitely don't go halfway across, all the way across the world to China to do this type of stuff. So where there's smoke, there's fire, but also there's paper trails here and there. And you just kind of put everything together and go, well, we don't have, a solid concrete thing. How is it possible to have this many instances cross over and then kind of put together? But also, this is why we're kind of waiting on the House Oversight Committee and, the FBI actually handing over some of this stuff, because the requests are being made, but they're not actually handing over the evidence.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, where a lot of people actually start to have pauses. Hey, we have evidence from the whistleblowers. They're showing us the screenshots of these chats that are going, and they have direct involvement. He's being mentioned. We're seeing it right here, and it's shown from the whistleblower that these types of documents and this specific document that's not classified is connected with the classified info. And
what's next for you? Are you going to what's next for you? Do you want to unleash an earth-shaking story, or how are you going to go about this?
For me personally, I mean, a lot of the CCP stuff to this point is kind of out of my hands. I think we have to kind of wait for the House Oversight Committee for some of this stuff to come out, because that's the actual, classified information that is just simply put not available to the public. But apparently it is available. It's just that they're not handing over that information.
Yeah.
Which, of course, this is the same agency that went and tried to criminalize the last president who's running now, President Trump, and is the agency run by the Biden Kamala Harris administration, are they going to hand over this information that would be detrimental? Probably not. And that's kind of the unfortunate part, because if it exists and they have access to it, and we have proof that they have access to it, but they're not handing it over, I think that's just where a lot of people raise their eyebrows. But the CCP stuff, kind of out of my hands at this point personally, at least when I'm looking at my town hall, my reporting. But there's plenty of other information and, stuff not CCP related that, I'm expecting to drop here, in the next week or two on a little bit more timely manner. I just have to verify a couple more sources on some of this stuff just to make sure we got something really concrete. But
well, let's watch the debate tonight and see where the chips fall.
Yeah, I agree completely.
All right, stay in touch. Thank you.
Have a good one, Joe.
All right, thank you,
guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.